Morning all, it's now 10 a.m, so I'd like to officially declare the meeting of the Finance and Services Committee open.
Can you just unmute your mic?
Mine's mute.
Thank you for your attendance and put apologies in for Councillor Pamela Story, who will be late. Stu, could I please ask you to the Karakia for the meeting opening? Thank you.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Chair. Anei te Karakia timatanga. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Ki mā kina kiuta, ki mā taratara ki toi. E hiaki ana te atakura, he tio, he hoka, he hauhu, ti hei Māori ora.
Thank you. I'd like to move to item number 2 on the agenda, which is apologies and agenda confirmation. Thanks, Mike and Robbie. Seconder. All in favour? Thank you. Confirmation of agenda. It's been circulated. Thanks, Stu. And Angela, seconder. Thank you. All in favour? Item number 4 on the agenda is disclosures of interest. Does anybody have anything to disclose today for recording? If not, we'll take that as we've got a mover for that, please.
Oh, we don't need a mover.
We don't? Okay, thank you. All right. Neville, you're in the chair now. Ara Tapu update, please.
Good morning, councillors, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to present today's report. I'll take the report as read, but I will take through a couple of highlights. So the purpose of this report is to ensure that the committee has visibility and understanding of the method that we've previously used at past Finance and Services Committee for reporting on the, I guess, the performance of our corporate services. And just noting that through the last triennium, that the reporting method we used was a dashboard. That dashboard was called the Corporate Plan Dashboard. Subsequent to its launch and a review of that launch, we rebranded it, and the rebranded name is now Ara Tapu. And the explanation of what that means in terms of its connotation around a pathway towards growth within the organisation is symbolic of the nature of the areas that we're measuring. The logic being that if we are performing at an acceptable standard in each one of the 5 key priority areas, that overall the corporate functions, the organisations will have a strong foundation. Just noting that it doesn't report on financial metrics at this stage. However, as time passes and we start to be able to bring in the project management performance, which we expect will be in about 12 to 18 months' time, and it is dependent upon another software system being fully integrated into our system. So when we have that, what we'll be reporting on, and that will be for one of our excellence measures, is the performance of projects that the council invests in, and how they operate in terms of achieving the objectives that were initially set. Right now we don't have that functionality, so that's a future objective. But in general, this is reporting on 5 key outcome areas, and those are identified in the report. Our customer performance, our culture performance, our innovation, our excellence, and Te Ao Māori. Now, the excellence measure is the one area that I was just talking about previously that we've been unable to measure up till now because we just haven't had the key indicators that we think are of value. But there is potential to include both the future reporting around project performance, but there's a suggestion in here around also using the council mark program of work, which does an independent assessment and audit of our performance, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in a moment. If in the report you will see an image of the dashboard that we've used previously. If I can manage to master sharing my screen, which is potentially not going to happen because I'm not very good at that, but I'll give it a go. And I'll show you a live version of that dashboard so you can get a bit of a feel for it. Let me see if I can. Yeah, thanks, William. I appreciate that because I've got a million things here and I'm not sure which one is going to show up. So this is just an example of the dashboard, that the live version of the dashboard that's sitting as an image in your report. And what we see here is, so when we look at the image you're seeing in the screen there, we have our culture indicators, our excellence, which is still under development, and our innovation dashboard. And we can drill down on those various measures. So if we want to have a look at our culture measures, for example, we can click on that and we can start to see what are we measuring and how are we doing. So, for example, we're looking at our well-being of our staff and how they're reporting, and through the various mechanisms that we use, how they feel in that regard. And the result is saying that 67% of our staff feel that the level of wellbeing support from the regional council overall is one that they enjoy. And so I won't go through each line item piece by piece. There is a list as an appendice in your report that shows you the type of measures that we are currently measuring and those that we propose to measure under each one of these priority areas, and they're being added in as we speak. So that's just a quick overview of culture. If we go to the customer indicator, you will see some of those key indicators there that measure how customers feel about the service that they receive from us. You'll see that first item is a net promoter score, which is a commercial process that is used widely to see how do people feel about the level of service, the quality of the service that they receive from the organisation they've received the service from. We derive that information. I'll just click onto this one from this dashboard here, which is a real-time metric of how our customers respond to us. And you'll see some verbatims on the right-hand side. The last one was from 47 minutes ago, and that customer gave us a 10 out of 10 rating. They believe they were contacted very quickly after sending in a report over the weekend. The staff member explained the process and what actions were required.
Out of your bag. Yes, of course.
So if we then look across each one of the directorates, and it will show us directorate by directorate, what is the level of responsiveness we're receiving and what is the quality of that service. So this information is drawn from this data set and then moved over and used to inform the customer component of the dashboard. So what I'm trying to show you here is that this is a type of information that will be used to inform the overall dashboard, noting, of course, that dashboard is being enhanced as we speak with the new metrics and measures that are referred to in the appendice in the report. So again, I'll just pop back to the dashboard in the report, and you can get a bit of a feel for how that works. Now, this is the councillor view that you're being presented with. There is a more detailed view for staff. So if I sort of click that one off, you'll see the numbers have changed slightly, and that is so that staff can get more detail underneath of the things that are meaningful for them to have to work on and focus on to be able to improve the overall result. So yeah, 2 versions with a lot more operational detail sitting down beneath in these areas that we looked at previously. So you'll see there's quite a lot more content in here than what was in the original or the first iteration I showed you. So this is just to give you a feel for the dashboard and what it is that we're hoping to be able to help you to be informed of what we're proposing to do using this as a reporting mechanism to this committee. That is subject, of course, to your acceptance that this is a valid mechanism, and so that recommendation is made in the report that you adopt this. It is an iterative model, so it's not completely static and stand still. We're going to continually improve it and add in metrics that are deemed to be valid and achievable from a data gathering perspective over time. But we don't want to clutter it with too much information. We want to make it valid and actionable from a staff perspective and from an organisational perspective. So I'll shut that off now and go back to the report. Hopefully I can do that. So in the report, we also talk about a couple of activities that are relevant to our performance. So try to do that each time we present to this committee. The first activity is the Customer Experience Transformation Program. Now, we covered that business case off at the annual plan meeting last week, so you will be familiar with the content of the report. So I've tried to minimise regurgitating that information for you today. However, one of the things that did come out of that meeting was a question around our omni-channel technology that Council generously chose to support the implementation of. So the report does provide a little bit more information and detail around what the omni-channel tool is designed to do. It is a technology solution. It is designed to be able to gather information about customers from multiple systems and present them to the operator who's dealing with that customer inquiry at that time. So the question was about, are we bleeding edge on this? Are we at the front in respect to this technology adoption? Or have other councils adopted it already? So we ran that inquiry across our networks and came back with some, at the time of writing this report, which was a little over a week ago, that Hawke's Bay, Whakatane, Far North, New Plymouth and Waipa had come back with confirmation that they're using this technology. Now, it's the methodology, I should say, the technology will vary from entity to entity, depending upon what solution they've chosen to run with, but the intent of the methodology is the same. So what we've got back is, yes, they are using it. It is well embraced across the sector. It is used largely to inform contact centre operations and delivery of services. And we expect, as we implement our own solution after we go through the RFP process, that we'll find further examples of other local government authorities who are using this technology in the ways they may be using it. And it will be a staged approach. We would implement the solution that works best for us, and then we would add additional functionality into it as our proposed customer experience transformation program evolves. So hopefully that helps to address some of the concerns that councillors were voicing at that meeting in regard to the technology and our approach to adoption of it. If I can just move on, and I'm happy to take questions, of course, at any time. There's a graphic in here in figure 2, which is on page 10 of your agenda, or on page 10 of mine, I should say. That just reiterates what you've already seen at the annual plan hearing, annual plan meeting, in respect to the 3 years of implementation of the program and the various streams and the major streams of work that are underway, and obviously the 6 strategic shifts we aim to achieve through the implementation of this program of work. And once again, very thankful for the investment that council has chosen to make. And just noting that we're not expecting there to be any huge further financial investments required in outer years. This is probably the major one. We're going to leverage the technology that is coming through IRIS Next Generation, which is an investment, obviously, the organisation has committed to making, but it's not an additional one for this program of work. We will be building off the top of it. So I just wanted to give you that insight. The other just quick update I wanted to give you is in regard to that excellence measure. So we are considering, we haven't made a decision yet, on utilising the LGNZ Council Mark independent assessment process across the organisation for giving us a rating and a view of where we could improve across key outcome areas. And so this review looks at governance, leadership and strategy, financial decision making and transparency, service delivery and asset management, and communication and engagement with our communities. So again, it's just to consider, it's an opportunity for us to consider. We haven't made a commitment to go ahead with it at this stage. It's something that we're contemplating. So the report does outline at a high level the program of work that the Council Mark process covers off, and we'll make a decision on that in some time in the coming months. So that is the content of the report that's before you. Welcome any recorded or questions or discussion.
Thank you, Neville. I've just got a question following up on the omni-channel technology. Firstly, the scope of the inquiry you made of the other organisations, other territorial authorities that are adopting this technology. I noticed they're using it as a call centre function, which makes sense. From my research on it, it seems to be pretty much used as a sales and marketing tool. But having said that, I see how the back end can also be used as a method of connecting customers, if you like, with services and the activities that they're doing. So I just want to make sure that regional council's not going out there as the guinea pig. Whatever we do, we're a follower rather than a leader, at this point anyway, with technology. So thank you for that. Anybody else got some questions?
Thank you, Chair. Neville, thank you for your report. Just 2 questions. One on the Council Mark assessment. What would the cost of that be?
It will be at a top end up to around $28,000. I think I've got some figures in there that give a bit of an indication. Under section 36, it's around, we've been quoted between $18,500 and $26,000. There is a lot of preliminary work required, so that does not include staff time spent collating the information that's required for the assessors to look at, and there's 2 days that the assessors spend on site, as well as their time they spend reviewing and researching the information they're provided. They spend 2 days on site, and a lot of that's involved with meetings, including with council, with stakeholders, with customers and with staff.
Thank you. And the second question was about the just with, that at certain times of the year, there's increased pressures on different departments, namely the rates department. Will this give us more data around the pressure at that time of year and additional staff needed, perhaps?
It's a really good question, and yes, you do see an influence, because we're not necessarily surveying those customers directly, because that transaction is generally a one-off. but you will get feedback through other mechanisms as to whether or not the customer experience has been particularly good or bad. But you're right in terms of the staff impact. So we do recognise that, and we provide more capacity for that team to be able to respond to those inquiries and the demand that's put on them. The transformation program will be looking at all of that. So trying to create a team that has a broader set of skills and more focus on just one function will enable us to have, be able to smooth the load and be able to have more capacity and capability for all of the customer requirements when they're required. So that is one of the benefits about the transformation program. It removes a siloed approach which we've currently got with one team, the finance team, having to manage all of that work. The goal being to be able to support them by bringing other staff in who have the right set of skills to be able to support them and the technology to help as well. So yeah, hopefully we can start to smooth out some of those seasonal demands.
And just one more, if I may. So just information from the Anteno app, does it come through to us?
Yes, it does.
Followed up?
It does, and it does get followed up. So there is I guess my observation is there's a limited usage of it across the regional, for regional council purposes. It's mostly territorial authorities get the major benefit from it. We do get notifications, however, and every notification is reported and followed up.
Councillor Strange, Councillor Kneebone.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, look, Neville, good to see the ongoing pursuit of improvement with this project. Really awesome. Before I get to my main question, just the antenna one, I use it a lot with Waipa District Council, and it does seem to me to be a logical way for ratepayers, community members to report smaller things that maybe don't justify a phone call, but and staff time, but just things I've noted that relevant part of the organisation could document. So I'd support utilising that.
It does come through to our customer experience team. They pick it up and then they direct the whatever the notification is to the appropriate department.
Yeah. Hey, just Te Ao Māori, really good to see that one added. I'm assuming in terms of the two parts, so the statutory requirements, I'm assuming interactions or surveying of our various partners would be an actual part of being.
So yes, so primarily, as you would have seen yesterday at the Tūwhare Tō Māori Trust Board hui, that we had a dashboard presented to us, or reporting presented to us, which showed where we were against those statutory obligations that we'd entered into. So that would be one of the foundation measures for each one of the 5 JMAs, that we would use those dashboards and collate them up and have a collective view. And we would know where we were against what we said we were going to do and what we are actually doing. And it wouldn't be a surprise to our iwi partners as well, because of the way we report it in. What we don't have is one unified view. And one that forms, and so there are 2 measures to that. One is about our progress to increase our internal competency and capability in Te Ao Māori. And then the other one is how we're doing against our statutory obligations. There are other obligations outside of what we do through the JMAs, which we could incorporate, and we're looking at, and we do report on those through, or Te Ara Whiti holds us accountable for those through its own reporting mechanism. What we have to be sure of is that that's an accurate measure of what we should be looking at. We've got 2 schools of thought on that one.
And in terms of the organisational multicultural competence, obviously completing different modules and education processes is one measure. The organisation demonstrating that it's using those, I guess, I'm assuming that would be quite a bit harder to be different ways of interpreting that as well.
Yes, so in the early stage at least, so as I said before, this is an iterative and developmental process. So our foundation will be about have we got courses and programs and interventions, and are people using them, and are they valuing them, would be the first tranche. And then as we start to get certainty about that, that part is working, then we'll probably start looking a little more around qualitative research and information. How has that been from an experiential perspective for both staff members, but also from an iwi partners perspective? A little bit more challenging, but we can see that being a future opportunity. And how well is it? How well has the knowledge and the learning been utilised? Yeah, those will happen as we advance down and mature in this space.
Thank you, Councillor Kneebone. Any further questions? Neville? Councillor Story?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry. A bit closer. I note the image you've got in the report, and thank you for the report, really thorough, appreciate it. The image on page 9 says that was the previous dashboard. Does the new dashboard, I don't know if you showed an image, and again, apologies for lateness before I arrived, but does the new dashboard clearly highlight what the new name of this initiative is?
Yes,
Yes,
it does.
Okay.
And unfortunately, we're just a little bit out of step with the release of the new dashboard. It's intended to be released next month, midway through March. There's a whole comms plan associated with that.
Okay.
So we've deliberately held back on communicating too much about it because it's taken longer than anticipated to get the new version into a state where it's ready for release. It will still continue to evolve as the new measures become supplemented into it.
Okay. And this is mainly a tool for internal communication, yes?
Yes.
It's not for communicating with people outside of the organization. No. Okay. So I guess the only reason I asked for that, the name of it to be quite clear, is that I see throughout local government the use of Te Reo Māori to name things, entities, groups, initiatives, and I fully support that. My issue is that we don't always explain what that means to people who don't
Yes.
speak Te Reo Māori, and so they wouldn't necessarily look at the name and know exactly, oh, that's a corporate plan reporting
Yeah. Yes.
initiative, right? So I do think it's important that we help people bed in what these new names mean, so that there's that ability to address any issues of feeling isolated from the process because they don't understand what that is.
I agree, and that's one of the key focal areas within the communication strategy is the genesis of the change in name. Great. And the interpretation of it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Story. Thank you, Neville, for your presentation and for answering those questions. We have 2 resolutions. Yeah, that was very good. That's very well done. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the financial performance monitoring forecast of 2022. And you're on the chair.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, councillors. I guess just probably a couple of opening comments. One, to acknowledge, this is the first time that this committee has met, and there is a lot of information that's presented within this report. Just an invitation, I guess, to committee members of the opportunity to check in that while the information's been developed over a period of time, to make sure that it's actually going to meet your needs as a committee, or whether there is other information that you're going to find more relevant in terms of discharging your role. So that's one point. Second point is probably just to note, and it's stating the obvious, but the results that we're looking at today are through to the 31st of December 2022. If we look at events over the last few weeks, that means that when we next report to you, which will be based on results to March, the position of what we think we're going to be able to achieve this year versus plan may well look quite different. Obviously, the need for some reprioritisation of work from particularly probably in our asset management, catchment management space, maritime services as well, as staff have moved really to a response and recovery framing following weather events and flooding, as opposed to the BAU program that was anticipated. So that conversation has started with the executive team about needing to capture a really comprehensive picture of what that shift means for us as a business, what the costs associated with that are, but what impact it will have on our planned delivery for this year. If I step though into the detail of the report, so the report's really covering off two aspects of financial performance review. So where we sit at the end of December, but also the forecast outcome at the end of the financial year. So I'll just step through those separately. Overall, in terms of our financial performance results, we are sitting slightly favourable to the year-to-date budget. So after allowing for reserve transfers, our shift in retained earnings, which is our general ratepayer funds, is 920,000 favourable to forecast. Within that performance, though, our revenue is reporting as unfavourable. Key element in that is in relation to performance of Council's investment fund. So that has very much been a detractor in terms of our budgeted return versus what has actually been achieved. But noting we have what's called the equalisation reserve, which is where in a good year we put money into that fund so that in a bad year we can draw out of the fund to make sure that we can support the rate subsidy in particular that is provided through fund returns. We've also just noted there a timing difference around flood protection income in relation to the shovel ready program. So it's about a $1.44 million unfavourable variance. In terms of expenditure, so total cost of service is just under 2 million favourable to the year-to-date forecast. A couple of key areas in there which are probably not that new to you because you will have heard a little bit about them through our annual plan discussion a couple of weeks ago. So the science, policy and information group of activities are forecasting an underspend this year, and we have factored that into some funding being carried over into next year to support the program then. And then also the land management advisory services program a little bit on pause at the moment, waiting for that central government direction around farm planning and primary sector engagement. And so noting the savings there that we have utilised through the annual plan process as well. Total capital expenditure for the 6 months has actually performed really well and very close to what was forecast, basically right on forecast, noting the variances within that though in point number 7 in the report. If we look then to the forecast, overall the year-to-date result from the forecast is a forecast increase or a favourable outcome of $336,000. So that is driven largely by increased returns on our working capital funds through our treasury function. So that is propping up some additional costs that we're seeing in other areas of the business. We have noted a drawdown in reserves of about 2.4 million, reflecting commitments that have been made in terms of Council's Regional Development Fund. Within our forecast process, what we do is ask our managers to look at what money potentially they won't be spending this year that may be required to carry over to next year to allow planned work programs to be completed. And so under paragraph 12, we've noted those carryovers there, which again predominantly have been taken into account when council has considered the 23-24 annual plan. So where they've been assumed in terms of the annual plan, we'll lock those in. Any other carryover requests we'll really have a tighter look at the end of the financial year once we see where we're positioned overall. And obviously at the moment, there's some uncertainty around that in response to weather events over the last few weeks. Those are probably the key points for me. Really happy to take questions or points of clarification in terms of the information that's provided.
Thank you, Janine. Basically, a very positive report year to date. We can expect some surprises in the next 3 months. Councillor Nebo, you have some questions.
Oh, not so much a question, just a comment on your opening comments, Janine. I'm anticipating that, particularly for ICM, find that a lack of availability of contractors is going to be quite a big challenge for those reasons. And I don't know if are we likely to be called on to supply staff with capability to some of those areas as well? I don't know how significant that's likely to be.
Yeah, potentially. I think at the moment where there is obviously still the national state of emergency in place, that's being led through Wellington and that coordination. But as you know, the way that the sector works is normally if we need to provide some support or surge capacity, whatever it may be, then those requests will come through. Whether we've heard of anything, any counterparts?
Yeah, what I can say is that I know that the South Island regional councils and Greater Wellington are offering to provide support just because they haven't been impacted at the moment, and they want the rest of the North Island to be able to make sure that we're in a good place before it calls in our resources. There has been a small request outside of the civil defence through the River Special Interest Group, and we're looking at it. But as I say, the other councils are saying that they're in the best position to provide support now. We just don't want to commit staff elsewhere until we know that we've got our house in shape, and there's nothing else just coming down the line.
Another thing, I guess, and that's going to be a bit of a challenge one too, is that we don't end up paying through the nose if it's that tension over deferring the project, I suppose, versus paying through the nose for it if it's competition for those resources. But I guess we're just going to make those decisions as they come along.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point in terms of what takes priority and what's the criticality of work relative to each other. So what do we need to do now, and what's the impact of deferrals? And it will, I suspect, be in that asset management capital space of just actually contractor availability without paying over the odds just to get something done. Is it critical?
And look, so it's a bit of an aside, but I'm curious to see how the likes of the corporate Hickory, I'm hearing that there's an alternative route through Dockland as to what sort of consenting process, whether the government just wants to try and override that, because we've seen in the past those attempts to access Dockland have dragged on for years.
Thank you, Councillor Nebo, and see the comments. We have a recommendation, section B, to council. 3 resolutions. We have a mover and a seconder for those resolutions, please. Councillor Nebo and Story, thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, Director Janine. Well, may I move on to your next responsibility?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is really the other side of the financial performance, tracking how we're going against our non-financial performance measures. And as noted in the report, these metrics or measures are set as part of the long-term plan, and they really are a core part of Council's accountability framework, so that we report back to the community around, this is what we said we were going to do. Have we actually delivered on those activities? Again, for the first 6 months of the year, a reasonably positive report with 81% of the measures that are able to be tracked at this point in time, either achieved or on track to achievement, with 4 noted there to be monitored, 3 being off track and 1 not achieved. So we provide you with the status at the current period in terms of 31st of December, as well as that forecast through to the end of the year, where you can see there are some measures that we're flagging as that won't be achieved. In terms of the measures that are off track, they are pulled out and highlighted within the report for the committee's attention in paragraphs 13, 14 and 15 in particular. But again, Mr. Chair, happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you, Dr. Janine. Once again, a very comprehensive report, and yeah, you're tracking in terms of your monitoring favourably rather than against. So that's it seems to be commended on that. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Janine? Obviously, given us more information than we require. Thank you. There are resolution that I'd like to put to the meeting, the report 22-23 second quarter non-financial performance results, finance and service committee 21 February be received. Thank you, Councillor Kneebone. Downard, seconded. All in favour? Against? Carried. The next agenda item is Mercer Investment Monitoring Report, 31 December 2022.
So I believe that we have Brian Kearney from Mercer, who's just dialing in now. Be with us in a second. Yes, as long as we're all using microphones, then it should be. Brian Kearney. Yeah, Megan's message to say that. I think it's worthwhile, any second, I think it's worthwhile hearing from Mercer in terms of investment fund performance. To the staff report, we can get the expert advice, move into some of the more administrative matters. So hopefully he will just a second.
Well, happy to wait for Brian to come online. Otherwise, we're going to be going back. Been suggested we have a 5-minute break. Are people comfortable with that? So, thank you. Thank you, William.